Baruch Hashem. Huh? It's a beautiful day. The day that's preparing for Rosh Hashanah, the new year, beginning of the new month, Tishrei, and the blessings, the judgments, the blessings, the desire, the hope, the prayer for a new year, sweet year. Particularly for those of us who are rising up out of the doldrums of the post-slavery in America, the post-slavery doldrum for the African. The newly awakened African has been in a doldrum for 158 years, post a very traumatic experience of slavery, 245 years essentially, slavery. So traumatic, it just blew our minds. It blew our ancestors' mind. They came to these shores as Africans with dignity and humanity, and they ran into the beast. And that beast converted them into niggers. Bam! Which is a consciousness. I talk about this, not consciousness. Awareness. The ability to see this much, this much, this much, this much, or to see the whole view. So when you can only see just a fraction of reality, it's called restricted consciousness. And we have words, euphemism and words to describe this type of thing, and this is what happened. It's a pejorative term. But now we have an opportunity because of the redemption. And we have been awakened. The awakening has been occurring, about the past 50 years. I was awakened in the about 40 years ago, 42 years ago, in the 80s somewhere, like that, awaken to my authentic identity as a impulse of creative intelligence that is timeless, ageless, boundless, and given a systematic technique by which I could dive into my infinite self, the infinite pool of creativity, and have my mind infused with that cosmic intelligence, and that begins to transform my own subjective views of myself and also increase my intelligence as I was transformed by going into the field of infinite being, in which it's infinite creative intelligence, and having that intelligence infused into my mind, and which cleaned the windows of my perception and enlivened the full potential of my nervous system in a very profound way. I've been having this about 45 years or so. So we've been awakened now, and so we're going now. This is a new year. We're standing at the threshold of Rosh Hashanah going forward, and we have a unique odyssey. Those of us who were enslaved. I went to all of the groups. I went to the Christian groups. I went to the Buddhist group, the Catholic group, the Muslim group, the Tao group. We're looking for everything, and what we find is that those of us who were in North America, we are unique. We're persona non grata, essentially, having been in that status. Nobody wants you because you're presumed to be the lowest of the low. And that's the beauty of Isaiah 53. Those that nothing, that man, that servant, that suffering servant, is in fact now ourselves, who have been awakened and empowered by our Lashon HaKodesh and other gifts given from heaven, so that in this new world that is being designed, we will be holy, we will be kadosh, we will be alive, because our consciousness will be fully awakened. Because in this resurrection, for those of us who were the post-slavery recipients of this new consciousness in North America, we don't have to be religion. We don't have to be religious going forward. We can look at religious people. People have a lot of religion. Of course, you can look around and see how ineffective religion is in terms of transforming the society or elevating consciousness. What you have is just individual pockets of individuals celebrating their particular branch, being ignorant of the tree of wisdom, which blossoms in the garden of eternity. And as it blossoms, it spreads its branches in relativity. And its branches become religion. And as long as the branches are saturated with the unseen sap from eternity, the religions thrive and flower and grow in the recipients of particular religious branch, having then experienced the aim of religion, the word religia. I think it's religion, relegere, I think is that word, legere, to bind back, to turn back to the source. And that source on the tree of life is the unmanifest sap of the eternal wisdom of Hashem, to use a word, the name, not to get hung up. The eternal, absolute, creative intelligence that's omnipresent and the source of everything that exists. So going forward now, this is the thing that was missing in slavery. What was missing in slavery, Dr. Yeshua? Knowledge of the totality of life. Life has been and taught to us as being one-sided, a objective, physical world that we can see. And everything is in this world, and we have to work hard to acquire as much as we can in this world. And if you can't, then you're a bit frustrated and confused. And that's the status of 50% knowledge of life. Life is 100%. And the totality of life now, which Baba Yeshua is introducing to his community. Not anybody else's community. Everybody else's community has their vision of what they do. They have their mitzvot over here in the Jewish community. They have their laws over here in the religion. So what must we have going forward? Are we going to go unto them and say, no, I'm going to convert to Judaism? No. Am I going to go and be a member of this church? No. What am I going to do? I'm going forward in the 21st to know that one thing that by knowing, nothing else need to be known, and by which everything else can be known. And that is the self. The essential self, the transcendental self. I think the word that we use now, based upon having these Eastern concepts substantiated by Western science, we call this region the unified field of natural law. How to take the mind into the unified field of natural law. How to transcend relativity. And I go back again, having studied and looked at many things I saw in the Likutei Moharan, such a beautiful description by Rabbi Nachman, which is why I celebrated Rabbi Nachman and celebrate him and will celebrate, because he's a great soul who was aware of his universality, his universal nature, because in lesson 4, he talks about how Moses could divest himself of his mentality, divest himself of his physicality, take his mind into the infinite light. This was what he said that Moses did, and he said that Moses didn't die. Moses simply merged with the Ein Sof, as they call it in Judaism, the infinite, eternal, beyond relativity. See, so and that's the self, because we're an individualized expression of that, and now we have the knowledge based upon the tradition from which we come. We come from a tradition, and our evolutionary odyssey has taken us on a unique path to give us knowledge for our purpose of life. Because now everything that we have done in the past now was preparing us to fulfill our purpose in life, and our purpose in life is to bring knowledge of the transcendental reality that is within each and every human being. And when we learn to dive into our infinite self, the eternal self, then our subjective minds become universalized, and that's become cosmic consciousness. So states of consciousness. So where we're coming from, in my own odyssey of my mind having been blown, being incarnated into the niggerdom, which is a kingdom of niggers, and nigger being a consciousness that was fabricated and created through negative reinforcement and stress, violence, and immorality. That's the fabric of our consciousness. And we were there in that sphere of consciousness for 245 years, being negatively reinforced, created to be a buffoon, a subhuman, laughable worker for a slave master, being a culture and people who created this consciousness. And now this consciousness now has post-slavery, 1863 to 2021's 158 years about, now has become violent because he has access to guns. He doesn't create anything now, but he's got a gun, and he has drugs, and it's a consciousness that's self-destructive. It was designed to be self-destructive. It is not. You cannot look at it as logical and progressive. That's evolutionary consciousness. That's a consciousness that's consistent with the laws of nature, where someone is born and that consciousness evolves. And it becomes higher and higher and higher. Well, because of the niggerdom and what was created by the Christian system here of white people, for us, we're born and we continue to devolve. They will have like hundreds of thousands of us in jail. Right now in America, I'm not making this up. And you can just see of black people in jail and men. And that's the consciousness of nigger that says, if you violate this law, but you were designed to violate this law. So anyway, that's another story. But so we're here now, our purpose to say, okay, now we have, not this, let that be the past. We're going forward. So going forward, we're going to introduce you to yourself, your authentic self, your cosmic self. That reference when you say I. What is the reference for the I? That reference for the I is an impulsive creative intelligence that lies beyond the field of activity. And there, prior to being enslaved, what made Africans great in many respects was their wisdom and knowledge of the transcendental field. And through a number of different technologies and rituals, they would transcend and experience infinity, the infinite field of creativity. Imagine a fresh sponge, new sponge, and just sit it in an ocean of pure water. And what does it do? It just absorbs all of the water. This is what the mind does. Rabbi Nachman says in Lesson 4, the Lakota Moharan, that when the mind dives into the infinite field of light, subsequent to its return, it is infused with light, and it knows that God is all and that God is one. Baruch Hashem. This is one of the reasons I celebrate Rabbi Nachman as a teacher, because I have a certain criteria for a teacher. And I never met someone in time that was a rabbi who could meet that, because of so many other things. But my destiny was to have Rabbi Nachman come in from above. That's why people wonder why I say, why are you singing about Nachman mi uman? It was because of my subjective encounter with the consciousness. And the consciousness was the consciousness of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. Now, I didn't find any community with him because they're on the subjective, whether you're Jewish or what color. But Rabbi Nachman is spiritual. That means transcendental. No spiritual person is localized to their group anymore. They've been working because by definition, spirituality is being connected to the universality, to the one, to that when we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Eloheinu, Hashem Echad. But what is that Echad? That Echad is that one singular source that everything in reality is a reflection of, a fluctuation of, a temporal manifestation of. So, going forward, this is what must be done to raise our consciousness first. We introduce ourselves to transcendental consciousness because we're all identified with waking, dreaming, sleeping state of consciousness. And so that's unique to everybody. And so based upon racism, now we're all divided based upon color. And then there's this argument trying to justify the features of melanin that makes me this or that, and you don't have it. So it's just a very, very shallow argument and a very shallow reality that people are existing in. And my purpose is to introduce you to a more comprehensive, universal reality that unites us, that we are already united, but we're just ignorant of that fact. Because knowledge is based in consciousness, and consciousness is an experience of knowing. Knowledge is the link between the observer and what he observes. That link that connects, that unified unity, because everything is one. And that's the beauty of, I think, of a book, Tanya. Mystical Judaism reads about this. All of the deep people understand it. So this is my message to my people. Who are we? And let's not amplify blackness. No. Blackness is not to be amplified. That's just the house that I'm in to do the work that I was assigned to do. And it's optimum for this evolutionary objective. But the consciousness, and guess what? As you begin to develop your consciousness, you begin to see that the reality of duality is unity. That's what it means. God is one. Yes, I am that. Thou art that. All of this is that. There's nothing else but that. One unbounded ocean of consciousness. One unbounded ocean of being. And all of the qualities of goodness are inherent in that, and simply by diving into that infinite pool of silence, all of the qualities of God are infused. Remember the sponge? Sit it in the water. Just let the mind soak up all of this goodness and come out. Then everything you desire, you begin to experience. Because what this does now, it aligns you with righteousness, because this pool of infinite intelligence is the governing force of the galaxies, of the universe. It's the flow of creative intelligence that orchestrates every manifestation, and it's omnipresent. And as our consciousness evolves, we begin to, first of all, we want to introduce you to that field by introducing you to our technology, the technology that I have cultivated during my last 50 years of study after visiting many people and studying and learning my own, cultivating my own technique for my people, not for the people who can go and pay $2,000 to learn transcendental meditation, but somebody who's ignorant and never gonna see that population to say, I'm of this population. Let me tell you about the nature of life. Life has two aspects, relative and absolute, seen and unseen. What you are is an individualized aspect of the eternal. And this technique that's coming down through the tradition of wisdom has been given to me for the purpose of giving to you, so that you can now sit quietly and dive into your own self into your own individual self and transcend your subjective self to experience that which Rabbi Nachman calls divine light, which science calls the unified field, which Maharshi calls being. So many names for that which is beyond name. That's why I love the name, Hashem. Hashem, the name. Beautiful. Which is not something up in the sky. That's childish. Going forward, we're going to have to mature, black people. And it's only a reference to our subjective self, because I told you our absolute self has nothing to do with color. Our gift is now going to be in the technology and our propensity, because it's the natural tendency of our mind. And if our melanin has any effect, it has to do with optimizing the natural tendencies inherent in nature, to optimize our physiology, to optimize our brain potential, to align us with the infinite field of creative intelligence so that our light can shine. Because going forward now, we're not dealing with death and dying anymore. We're the voice of that, because what happens, introduction yourself to yourself, is a transcendental self. So the first step of knowledge is one, I am not physical, I am transcendental. That was what was meant in the teachings of the church. I am a spiritual person, or in the synagogue, or in some spiritual seminary. I am a spiritual being. They were trying to say I am not localized to this physical world, but I'm an expression of the infinite eternal being. So going forward, we have the introduction to the transcendental self. And as that sponge is saturated each time we go into that field, when we come out, we experience more of the illumination associated with that field of being. Our minds become clear. We feel as if we're in that field, even when we're out of that field in activity. See, right now, if you've never been introduced to the field, you think you are the activity. I am moving. I am going to the store. But as you transcend more and more and experience your authentic self, then you no longer feel separate. Oh, blessed. You no longer feel separated. You feel connected. Connected to the universe, connected to your authentic self. Welcome home. I'm not separate and alone. I'm in the light of God. In the light of God, I live and move and have my being. Then you begin to see that all there is the play and the display of that. Even my saying this to you is the movement of that. If you understand. So it's a beautiful season in life to know where we're going. What is our plan? No, we're going to become the light of the world. The light of God is descending. The kingdom of heaven is manifesting. How? From within outward, as we dive into ourselves through this technique of self-reflection that's given to the poor. I'm not going to sell you anything. You can donate something so they can buy some flowers and things for you because of the offerings. And when they gave it to me, they said, you have to do an offering to Brahmananda Saraswati. I said, oh, really? Who is that? Brahmananda Saraswati was the living expression of that cosmic divinity in this time, giving us a technique by which we can make these offerings. And it was said it consistent with Newton's third law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I was wondering, well, why does the priest offer bread and wine? And what is that about? What is the offering? And who are you offering it to? Well, it wasn't who, it's the universe is a sentient being. So whatever you give will be received back. Same thing. So we're understanding now. And this is what our ancestors knew before the missionaries came and destroyed our knowledge. We had to go through this so that we could be propelled. Sometimes you have to go through the dark of night before you can rise to the pristine sunlight of a new day. It's always preceded by the dark of night. So this dark of night, this little short period of time, 400 years of being in North America, to be put in a position to learn something, well, we had to go through a bitter night. Well, the night is over, and we will not go forward alarmed or disturbed by having PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome. We're going to enrich our consciousness and elevate our consciousness so that we can live in higher states of consciousness in this new dispensation of redemption. Redeemed from religion, redeemed from these things so that we can be self-governed, self-realized, living in concert with the laws of nature, not violating righteousness, living in the light of God, being the light of God, seeing yourself in your brothers and sisters of every race, color, creed, persuasion, seeing the whole thing as a beautiful dance and display of infinite creative values, not judging anyone, not isolating anyone, not accusing anyone, but allowing each and every one to be their living expression of their authentic selves, tearing down walls. I can't say that I'm God's son and I have a wall up from my neighbor. God always tests me. I have some poor neighbors sometimes. And the human part of me wants to say, it want to feel it. And then God said, oh, no, you can't be like that. They always come and say, no. And I said, oh, I have to always say, oh, yes. Then I give them something that Rabbi Nachman says, give them a book. Give them something. Because that's me. I see it. And every time. So it's the beautiful thing of spirituality being transformed so that we can transcend our ego reactive tendencies, our subjective reactive tendencies, and become a giver. I mean, that's because to become a giver is to become a participant, because to become a giver is to be transformed in what was given to you. Because each time, remember the spawn, each time you sit and dive into the infinite field of pure being, your mind is infused with that light and that intelligence. And your nervous system is refined to maintain it in activity. So after you've been doing my meditation 3, 4 years, so you feel all the time in the activity, that connection to the light of God, that connection to being, that connection to the unified field. And you're transformed. Now you're living now the full value of life, because the full value of life is the 200% value of life, 100% of the physical, 100% of the spiritual, 200% values, fullness on this side. I am full over here. The fullness of this. This fullness gives rise to another fullness. Purnamidam. 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 Those say those words in Sanskrit, meaning from this fullness, from the fullness of infinity, comes the fullness of the relative, in which the relative becomes aware of its infinity, giving rise to a total life of infinite living, full. And this is the destiny of the African American man going forward. Those who come to the fountain that I have, and to drink from this fountain of self-reflection, to be transformed, to be renewed, to be enlightened, to be enlivened by the cosmic intelligence that structures destiny. It's a beautiful joy to be alive. It's a beautiful joy. It's a beautiful gift to us. It's a beautiful gift to us from Brahmananda Saraswati, quite frankly, who gave this knowledge to me. And I've been engaging this for quite some time. Yeah? Enough to be mature. That's 42 years plus, according to Kabbalah. So we've been doing this, and we know And we see the teachings of Kabbalah, the mystics, all the mystics in any religion, because that's the game, that's the beauty of religion, the goal of religion, the purpose of religion being a branch on the tree of wisdom. And the wisdom of life is the wisdom of the unmanifest aspect of life, and the values of the unmanifest life is the supreme wisdom and the supreme gift of life, to live heaven on earth, not in the sky. So this is the destiny of the African American. This is the teaching for the African American going forward, to be liberated from the teachings of God up in the sky and those type of things, and this different from me and I'm not his brother. No, we're going to understand now that say these words, the reality of duality to unity, one. Because we see Shema Yisrael, Hashem Eloquently, Hashem Echad, God is one. That oneness is one, that one intelligence that manifests itself through infinite diversity. And wisdom is knowing that. And the purpose of our incarnation into this physical world, the purpose of religion and religious practice and but if they don't, but it's like the dwellers in the house. It's like when the sap dries up, when the root system is disconnected from the tree withers and dies. And that's the status of the branches or the religion. They're all fruitless because they're disconnected from the sap. They have no knowledge of the transcendent. They think of God as a man up in the sky, and they've got to do these things to please God, rather than understand this metaphoric language that says this is the ultimate reality that is one. So may we all grow in this wisdom, because this wisdom has come. This is what I'm telling you. This is what has been given to me. This is our destiny. That one thing that has been missing has been given. That one thing that's necessary for enlightenment has been given. What is that, Baba? Knowledge of my authentic self and a technique. See, I'm talking theoretically, but when I give you my technique, you can sit and meditate and dive into that field. You haven't seen someone like Baba Yeshua. There ain't been nobody like me before here in North America. You know? I've been in Israel many times to sit in those holy places and to meditate, and to be in India, and to be in Africa, and to be in Ethiopia, and to be in Ghana and Sierra Leone, and to be in Australia, and to be in Bali. Those things where Hashem took me on the mystical odyssey to transform me so that I could speak to you today as we reach the threshold of a new year. This is going to be the brightest year ever for those of us who have arisen from the dead. We're going to be blessed beyond our imagination. If you think our mind was blown when they converted us from an African to a nigger, then our mind is going to be blown even more when we rise from this nigger level up to the king of the cosmos. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Hashem is good. May you be blessed. May your families be blessed. May we all see that we are one and understand what is meant in Deuteronomy 6:4. Hashem is one. And as also it says in Zechariah, you're going to take hold of the seat of an enlightened person. Because a real Yehudi is enlightened. A real Yehudi is the Son of God. The Son of God is someone who has God consciousness. Someone who has God consciousness recognizes God is everywhere and is not hiding in the corner of a building saying, we're celebrating ourselves and you can't come in. That's make-believe. Maturity means seeing, oh yes. Then people come to you and say, oh, you're the light of God. Yes, because God doesn't light a candle to put it under a bushel. He puts it up on a table so everybody can see. That's unique. Who is this Yeshua? This Yeshua Yisrael is an ancient soul coming to tell us you have forgotten the one thing necessary. The totality of life and how to touch the face of God. To take hold of the seat of a Yehudi is taking hold on to this now. to ride with Baba to say, let's experience the transcendent. And let's not be afraid to see that there's this one infinite pool of creativity, creative intelligence, from which the universe and all of everything else arises. And when our consciousness has been elevated sufficiently, we will see that, not just have a theoretical appreciation and be connected with it. Baruch Hashem, Lashana Tova.